Mr. Haqqani, Sirajuddin Haqqani, welcome to the program. Now, you have only recently shown yourself publicly. Here, it was at a police passing out parade. This is your first proper interview. Why now?
Based on the current necessity, and because of this necessity, the local and international community had concerns. Based on the concerns that existed on local and international levels about a number of individuals who do not want to be blamed for implementing the commitments that have been made with the international community.
The only thing we really know about your thoughts now is something you wrote for the New York Times back a couple of years ago at the beginning of negotiations with the Trump administration. You wrote then that I'm confident, and you said once this territory is liberated, we together will find a way to build an Islamic system in which all Afghans have equal rights, where the rights of women that are granted by Islam, from the right to education to the right to work, are protected, and where merit is the basis for equal opportunity. I want to know whether you still believe that.
The commitments that have been made. The situation at the time was a situation of war. The opposing parties have provided a very bad picture and definition of our administration. We wanted to take over the government by peaceful means, and the former government, with the assistance of some other circles, sabotaged our particular plan or program. The transfer of power under military conditions. Currently, there are a large amount of rumors and hearsay. And for this reason, a strong decision is underway so that we can implement the commitments that have been made by us within an environment of trust, so that we can implement those commitments.
Many times I have spoken occasionally to Taliban leaders, even back in the 1990s, and they told me something similar, that it will take time, and yet it never happened. Do you believe that young girls, secondary school girls, will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
I would like to provide some clarification. There is no one who opposes education for women, and already girls are allowed to go to school up to grade 6, and above that grade. The work is continuing on a mechanism. You may have heard that this is not opposed at the level of leadership or the cabinet, but the issue has been postponed until further notice. In the declaration provided by the Ministry of Education, there were some shortcomings within the preparation that were ongoing. Work is ongoing on those issues. Through this interview and news channel, I am assuring that there is no one opposed to education. Only that work has started on the mechanism.
Could you tell us when you think that will happen? I know there has been a big meeting in Kandahar with your supreme leader, Mr. Akhundzadeh. Can you tell me whether any decisions were made over this past few days?
What I am saying to you is that very soon you will hear very good news about this issue, God willing. We will specify the time. On the arrangement that has been provided by the leadership, work is ongoing on that, and you will hear very good news soon.
Can I ask you, I don't know whether you have any daughters, but do you favor your daughters going to secondary school?
We all believe that education has been created as a blessing from God, which has been made essential to both men and women. As I mentioned earlier, there is no one is opposed to education. The problem is education based on the Afghan way of thinking and understanding the culture aspect of Afghanistan. There is an issue of making arrangement of Islamic rules and principle. On a broader level, the situation that exists in Afghanistan concerning the issue of hijab, because if someone is giving away their daughters or sisters, they do that based on total trust. We must establish the conditions so that we can ensure their honor and security. We are acting to ensure this.
I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but first I want to ask you about the United States, because many people in the United States are obviously interested. Now, you have signs and slogans that I've seen painted on the walls. Some of them are touting defeating the United States. Some of them say that you are by the people, of the people. About America, do you consider America still to be your enemy?
I would like to make a small clarification. The period of the last 20 years was a situation of defensive fighting and war. When the agreement was made in Doha, we decided that we would not be talking about this. In the future, we would like to have good relations with the United States and the international community, based on rules and principles that exist in the rest of the world. And based on that arrangement, we have made commitment with them, and currently we do not look at them as enemies. But based on their conduct, the Afghans have reservations about their intentions. From our side, the freedom of the country and struggling for the country's defense is a legitimate right, in accordance with the international rules. Currently, we do not look at them as enemies, and we have time and again spoken about diplomacy. We are committed to the Doha Agreement. Like the rest of the world, we want relations with them based on principles and diplomatic norms that they establish with us, and that they don't go back on that.
We'll get to some of those reasons in a moment, but I do have to ask you, Mr. Haqqani, because you know very well that you are under personal sanctions by the United States, which also has a multi-million-dollar bounty on your head. This is what a top Western official told me just before I got here. He said, "We're in a new world. The guy, that's you, has a huge amount of American blood on his hands. He's got, in the Taliban, the tightest ties to extremist movements. He was also one of the first to put women back to work in his ministry. We have seen his ministry take promising steps to contain terrorism. To call it a paradox is an understatement. This is not just my opinion, it's the opinion of every single envoy who works on these issues." So on the one hand, they believe you're a terrorist, I'm sorry to say, that's they who say that. On the other hand, they think they can work with you. What do you say to that?
I would say that this is a judgment that they should make. I have mentioned this before, that they have fought us intensely. And in order to defend the country and ourselves, our response was the same. But the commitment and the form of governance. In order to create secure Afghanistan, we sent a positive message to the world and sent a positive message to our nation. While the previous situation had concealed our real picture. And currently, praise God, under the conditions of freedom, our conduct is being revealed gradually to the international community. And also, this is being revealed to certain circles within the country who are thinking negatively about us.
One of the key pledges you made to the United States was that Afghanistan would never again be used as a basis for terrorism against the US or its allies. Are you still committed to that? And how do you explain, in recent months, there have been attacks here, people saying that they belong to ISIS, ISIS-K, increasingly bold attacks on education centers, even on mosques, on a bus, even on a school. Some 100 or so people have been killed in recent weeks and months. I mean, that doesn't look like a very secure situation.
The commitments that we have made, if you think about it, during the 14 months after Doha, even though there were a large number of transgressions continuing from the opposing side against us, our leadership was making recommendations to us repeatedly that we should stick to our commitment, as well as the fact that until the liberation of Kabul, we were making effort to uphold our commitment and come to power through peaceful means. Here, we have internal threats, and some are deliberately elevating the threats to portray them as a cause of concern for the nation and for the international community. There can be threats to the rest of the world that are orchestrated by a government, but we would like to strongly reassure the rest of the world that our land will not be used as a threat to anyone.